I don't think there is an awareness of the link between climate change and sport. The women of Ladakh or the ice hockey players of Ladakh will tell you that they are not able to find, there's no artificial rink, so natural rinks are, the season is getting smaller and smaller. I think there is certainly a greater awareness of mental health. Again, when I said when it comes to elite athletes, they're able to talk about it and speak about it and express themselves. I think access to sports is very important. Access to any kind of sport. I mean, you don't have to win. You just have to take part for the fun of it. Boys will always play sport out in the open. But what about girls? How do girls get to be a part of that? So there are so many kind of issues that are at work here. Abhinav Bindra says this: we need to change the way how we look at sport in this country.
So thanks a lot, Sharda, for joining us and giving us the opportunity to host you. My first question would be, how do you see the evolution of sports culture in India in the last 2 decades, especially in the terms of well-being of athletes and the training conditions?
If you're speaking about athletic well-being and the conditions in which they train, I think you have to say that elite athletes are very well served at this point in time. And that has come about because there has definitely been a change in how we have looked at our elite athletes over, say, the last 25 years. If you're going back to the 1990s, it was a completely different situation. But here we are talking about specific Olympics disciplines. Like, say, for example, I don't know what happens with the basketball team and the volleyball team, and in team sports, it's been quite a bad scene in the past. I don't think it's improved much in the present. Other than, say, hockey, for example. But the idea of sort of mental health, well-being, physical comfort, that has just only come into play, say, in the last maybe, I think, let me say, what have we in 25, but the last decade, I think would be safe to say around that time. But there's also this whole urge to produce medals, to have medals come. It also becomes a sport. It's also seen at some point in some ways it was seen that you have to sacrifice. You have to go through hardship to reach this point of, and you have to give us a medal. So that kind of transactional kind of conditionings that was there, it's taking a little time to kind of go away from. But I don't think I think elite athletes are very well looked after. I don't think juniors are looked and treated in that same way in terms of, because they think, oh, this is the tough way, you have to do it and whatever and all that. And prodigies are treated well, but not the average person or the average athlete who comes at a
And it won't be wrong to say that the sports which comes with heavy money is being treated well, but the money, the sports which doesn't have that much money is not being
Not
treated.
really. I mean, when you're saying sports which come with the money, is you're talking cricket, correct? Now in
Yes.
cricket, first class cricketers have enough income and they travel in style and they travel in aircraft or whatever. But there's a lot of harassment and that kind of discomfort is there with women's cricketers, say, for example. The abuse of systems, the corruption in the system, that has not gone away. Selection is a very big sort of point where that comes in as to who gets selected. So there are institutional sort of fractures and there are institutional failings even in a sport like cricket, which is run very efficiently at the domestic level, but at state level you don't know what's happening in terms of, say, creature comforts for its athletes and so on.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I would do a follow-up question on that. Is that, we've
I
seen
mean,
diverse.
you know that even in Sri Lanka I had to play with a mask in international match. You remember the one there where they said that the air was bad in Delhi and all that. I mean, for us to even accept that is an issue, it became
Right.
like national pride ka thing ki what is this and all. So there is that bakwas also that's going on.
Right. So, now you raised the issue of pollution. We're seeing pollution very extensively in all the major
Yes,
cities in the country.
yes,
We have heat waves, extreme weather conditions.
yes.
How is that impacting, say, a player who is coming from a rural India and is practicing? Basically, they don't have that kind of infrastructure where they can get clean water, clean air, or better health facilities.
You're saying if they belong to villages, maybe there's better air and water there in that sense. I'm
Yes,
not saying that
yes,
that's
but in
the
the
thing.
end, for the training purposes, they have to come to bigger cities.
Correct, correct. Without a doubt. I don't think that is seen as a factor in any way because there are so many other hurdles that you have to get to there. For example, a friend of mine wrote a very moving piece yesterday about the fact that the Manipur team at the national games doesn't have any cookies players. So all the players who were there in Manipur, they all have split into various parts of the country and gone and trying playing for Mizoram, playing here, playing there. So there for them, just the chance and the opportunity to play is the big thing. I think our sports administration is very very much behind the curve in this kind of any this kind of sort of concern for athletic welfare. I mean, only just we've had people accept that athletes have to be, no matter how like I said, they are greedy, they are insecure, they're manipulative, but they have a talent that you and I don't have, and it cannot be copied. So no matter that, to appreciate that talent and to respect them, that's a very new development. I mean, athletes have always been treated almost like by the officials that run the sport, and our sport is also run in a very non-professional manner. Olympic sport particularly. You're saying cricket, yes. I don't know how. I think there were certain. They had changed some games in fixtures in the domestic circuit because in cricket because of pollution and health-related warnings and so on. But they'll still be playing the IPL in the heat of the summer.
Yes.
Are they going to change that? Are they going to change that thing and say, look, this is not the best time for athletes to be playing. The temperature should not be this much more than this much. I don't think that comes into it. I don't think that's... even the players don't want. They think, rehne do, mat jayenge, it doesn't matter. We're getting paid for 6 weeks of work, 4 weeks of work, whatever. So I think that our whole sporting ecosystem is literally behind the curve in a lot of things, starting with basic professionalism. So how are they going to even reach the point of basic professionalism and say, okay, the welfare of the athletes is this thing, we have to see where they train, we have to see where they, that's where it starts. It can't be random. At the moment, a lot of it, majority of things are random.
Right. So, I mean, as you've pointed out, when these things are happening, I mean, can we expect, say, Sports Authority of India or a government to accept that climate change and health is also an issue for an athlete? And are there concrete steps being taken in that direction?
I think there is one thing I would always want to make clear, that the Sports Authority of India and the government, which are basically one on one side, they are not the sports organizers or the ruling bodies. So
Right.
that look after the athletes. It's not their sort of, it has not been their remit to do it to start with, but it is all these sports federations that are the people who say, and it's those sports that then send people and hold camps to people to sigh, and then the government comes in. But because those federations are dysfunctional, the government has stepped in and organized Khelo India games and Asmita games and done whatever. So they will, I think, because there will definitely be something from health ministry or something, there will definitely be some kind of, they're playing the national games in Dehradun. I don't know what the weather in Dehradun is at this point in time. I don't think it's too bad. But they had played, I'll tell you what had happened. They had once, I don't know who organized this. In May, they had the Women's Football League take place in Gujarat. I think a year or 2 years ago. It was vile. And we want, okay, what are you talking about government, this thing? Ahmedabad, Gujarat is being seen as the great, as the venue for the Olympic Games. When are you going to hold the Olympic Games? The Olympic Games are usually held in Western summers, which is when there is no football season, nothing. So are you going to hold it in the Western summer? No, you're not. You can't. You cannot possibly hold the Olympics in the, you cannot. It's not possible. So you'll hold it towards the winter. At that time, what are your pollution levels like? Is environment a factor that you're considering when you're even trying to make a pitch? I doubt very much. All they're trying to do is saying we are doing buildings. There's 1,000 acres of land has already been bought for buildings and infrastructure or whatever. So there is a certain cynical kind of an approach to organizing big events, to creating the spectacles rather than looking at the things on the ground. I mean, I think there was a national game that was held in Gujarat a few years ago where the athletes had a problem. I think there was some problem with one swimming pool. So they had to shift the swimming to some other venue. So
Right.
it's the basic starting point of every event, that it has to be, the field of play has to be absolutely pristine and the conditions have to be good and all the rest. But that's not part of it. It's just like this whole sort of sarkari exercise in that sense. And I don't think there is an awareness of the link between climate change and sport.
Sports.
And the fact that our athletes, I mean, the women of Ladakh or the ice hockey players of Ladakh will tell you that they are not able to find, there's no artificial rink, so natural rinks are, the season is getting smaller and smaller, shorter and shorter. And because they face literally, they are like the ground zero of climate change in Ladakh. They are most aware about this. They're most aware. I don't think people are elsewhere in the country.
So the other question that would come up with this is that not just training and all, but you also have a burnout with players now. They're being overexposed. Are we talking about? Are we talking about their mental health condition? Are we talking about how are they coping up with these things?
I think there is certainly a greater awareness of mental health. Again, when I said when it comes to elite athletes, they're able to talk about it and speak about it and express themselves. But this is after they have achieved a particular level of success. What if they have not? What if they are trying to kind of push themselves up and be seen and be noticed and have good results and say, look, choose me, I'm talented, I need help, whatever. They will not bring mental health into the equation at all. They have to be at a position of like a stature to say that I can talk about the mental health sort of situation that exists. But the good athletes and these organizations that look after athletes, but these are private organizations whose work really annoys federations and government both. The private organizations are very careful, even with younger athletes, I think so, bringing in mental health experts and bringing in psychologists and having people talk to them. So that I know is happening. But it's not happening at scale. In the sense, you can't see it happening in local leagues and all that. It will be seen as why are we going to bother? Do we really need it?
Recently,
themselves,
recently we interviewed, say, a sleep coach of Swedish Olympic team.
Yes.
And he talked about how important sleep is for an athlete to look for. And then we interviewed Barney Weston for Football for Future, and he talks about sustainability manager in clubs.
Yes.
I mean, do we have something like this in India?
No, I don't think we have got sleep coach in any way, but I could be wrong, because what happens is now suddenly the nutritionists have become a big thing, right? Everyone's like, all the big superstars have their own nutritionists and they travel and they do whatever. So I think the idea of a sleep coach will come in at a point where, again, if it's a high spending, a high expense game, that's probably the time that will come in there, when there's someone will bring that sort of thing in. There has to be, again, a certain amount of what I'm optimistic about is that because younger and younger people are coming into management and administration and running of sports things, that these ideas will seep in. Maybe we'll be, say, 10 years too late, but it will not be at least 25 years or 30 years too late. That it will seep in into the future conversations, because people are now, due to the internet, able to access more information than they could in the past, individual athletes themselves, as well as coaches, trainers, and so on. And again, I think it will work better with individual athletes rather than in team sport. It might be a bit, I don't know what it, but at least the athlete or their manager will have some information as to where do I go when faced with this problem. That's why I'm optimistic.
Right. So, I mean, we also seeing a lot of increase in, say, so as sports happens, sports are becoming popular with somebody like Neeraj Chopra winning a gold medal in the Olympic. Javelin becomes important game for the
gold
country.
And silver. Don't forget the silver, bhai.
Yes, and the silver. Javelin becomes all of a suddenly important game for the country.
Yeah.
So more and more people start watching it. More and more people start watching it. They go to the stadiums.
Buying javelins.
They buy plastic bottles, have food, and then all the garbage is dumped there. I mean, are we following up on these kind of issues? Because that is also impacting your climate and in a way health of the people.
I think if you're talking about spectators, let's talk about spectators primarily. In India, which is the biggest sport in India is cricket, and spectators there are treated the worst that they are treated in the whole world. I mean, the spectator experience in India the stadium experience in India is the worst. So if we start by giving them, so during the World Cup they said you're going to get free water, like a big Dane. So we're going to give free water so that you don't buy bottles and you don't do whatever. So there is some awareness of these things coming in, like RCB sometimes has one green day or something like that. But the whole spectator experience per se is not a good one. So I am in two minds about this, thinking that there is always labor to clear up the mess of the spectators leave behind. But there is no, and I'm talking primarily of cricket. Other stadiums, because the sports are of shorter duration, people come and go, and it's much simpler. But I think in cricket there is the spectator doesn't is not a is not seeing as is seen as a commodity rather than as a investment or rather than as a stakeholder or whatever, to use all these things. I don't think garbage clearance is such a big thing, because there is stadium always have staff, but whether that stadium organizer puts that staff to work to clean the thing, then that's again, it's a governance issue. So the governance in our sport is not of a very high quality. So which is why all the cascading effect goes to many things, not just one particular sort of aspect of holding or organizing or governing again.
Sharda, my follow-up question on that would be, I mean, do we have examples in India where now things are changing, like the teams or the clubs? I mean, are they trying to adapt to some climate sustainable, health sustainable models?
I think they are seeing it as something that they want to do because it's seen as a trendy thing to do in many ways. But say, for example, in football, the story of Mizoram fans who clean up, like Japanese fans, Mizoram fans clean up after they go. That's like the thing. They've always done it. So that's an example. And because of social media, that thing kind of gets amplified. There are some clubs that are doing it. It'll be the newer clubs. It will be clubs that have just come into being, like say BFC or whatever, Bengaluru football, or if it's a cultural habit, then they'll just follow through from what has been happening over decades. RCB as well. I don't know whether there is I have not seen, say, a really sustained mission or an advertising campaign about recycling, garbage clearings, about whatever. They'll always make these shirts. This shirt is made of 12 recycled PET bottles. But you want to sell the shirt to me, no? You want to make money off that shirt, basically.
Right.
It's not done in a public service kind of a way. Promotion of environment and health related and sort of green issues is done more. It's part of the sort of merchandising and the branding, and it's not done part of like public service. In the past, athletes would come and say, please do polio vaccination, whatever. That is just not there. Where you're thinking it's the simplest. You should make a really nice campaign about it, but it takes too much of effort to make that campaign, and you don't earn X on your balance sheet, I suppose. That's my opinion.
And how are women athletes placed on in these scenarios, because they face much more harsher conditions than, say, a man trying to play a game?
I think in terms of, say, do they have a voice in how things are run? I mean, the Ladakh Women's Ice Hockey Federation Foundation, they are an exceptional group. I don't think there's anyone like them because they genuinely have agency. We must remember, there are no independent player association bodies in the country that have a voice and that whom people listen to. There is a men's football thing, but I don't think which has some kind of traction, but I don't think cricket doesn't have any. It's got one chamcha. The Indian Olympic Association has one athletes commission, which is useless. So it's the groups of, say, women that are there in it. The ice hockey women to me are the most prominent and the most interesting, and they are aware of climate change issues. They are very, very aware, and they talk about it, and they publicize it. How are their problems? Their problems are enormous. I mean, the women's, no matter where a female athlete comes from, she always starts from a position of 10 steps back in that sense as to where she's going. Whatever it is, there's always someone trying to control her. So it's not as much as a environment as much as a society thing that goes on with women athletes.
Right. So, I mean, we've also witnessing very recently, and it might be a bit controversial question, that there's a rise of, say, social media in India. There's a rise of advertisements in India. On the other hand, you have people where younger people are getting heart attacks, they are having obesity, diabetes, but you still have players promoting, advertising things which basically is adding to those kind of things.
Yeah.
without seeing labels? I mean, where is the accountability?
Not nowhere, because you are a superstar. You can get away with whatever you're selling. I mean, people do ads for gaming companies. They do ads for fantasy sport. They don't think about it. There is no awareness in that sense that there's any accountability equation going on. There's none. In public life, there is none. Why are you blaming athletes? In public life, there is no accountability sort of equation that's working. So why should athletes be thinking about these things? Other than Gopichand who said, I'm not going to advertise soft drinks. But it's not, and a couple of other, it'll be much more sporadic, it'll be much more sort of independent of individuals. Individuals will take it up, and not so much it be seen as an industry practice, which I think it should be.
And so, I mean, also we have got a lot of influencers on Instagram showing, say, 12 hours of routine in the gym, and then reporters following an athlete, that how they work out. But there's no scientific take on it, because, I mean, we also see young people dying in gym because of cardiac arrest.
Yeah. I mean, there is this whole sort of body image pressure now on people to be in this particular, to look good in a particular way. All the extreme sports that are there. But I think post-COVID, particularly, there's been a great surge in the deaths of young people. In Bangalore a few years ago, a young footballer died in the field, and there was no ambulance to take him to the hospital. He had a heart attack, and but now that has changed. It's a different sort of a thing that's there. But you can't. I mean, the world of social media is so. It's like there's a great saying, I've forgotten who said it. Celebrity is a mask that eats into your face. So the mask of celebrity is what's keeping people going and doing these things and wanting to be celebrity and earning money by being influencers. It's not a health thing as much as, I mean, the balance between health and fitness, I think they seem to think it's the same thing. There's no kind of distinction. Younger people are now, who are born with social media, they see the world through it. That's where the errors, I think, happen. That's where some kind of checks and balances are needed. But you can't say that, okay, there'll be no social media. The world with social media is not going to go away. You just have to find a way to work around the madness, and to have role models, and to keep pushing role models who talk about a balance. And I mean, there are people who are doing crazy amounts of exercise that suddenly died of heart attack. So post COVID, we don't know how the human body is reacting to the fact that we had this massive pandemic take place, and all of us were affected.
And similarly, with the kind of things that you're promoting, that what you eat, what you drink, and how it's going to impact your health.
Yeah. And also there's another thing of, the sort of artificial things that you get to eat, which is whatever, everything is supposed to be organic, and it's less fat, and it's zero fat, but you don't know what the sugar is, and there's zero sugar, but something else is there. So there is like a basic lack of, I think, food chemistry that's going on at that point in time. To see, there is also a pushback, I think, in many ways, where people are trying to come back to familiar habits of eating, of eat like your grandma ate, kind of a thing. There's a little bit of that as well. But we don't know. There's also a big push that less carbs, more protein diet is the one you want for a better health, or whatever it is. But in a country like India, carbohydrates is your basic stomach filling thing that you eat. We are not a country of a very rich population. We know the inequality that exists, and for people being able to just satisfy your hunger with a whole lot of carbs is what you do. And then how are you going to make this work for a society that is economically not as strong as this ideal world is, where everyone eats proteins and eats like 2 slices of bread a day, or 3 spoons of rice, or chapati, or whatever.
Okay, Sharda, that would be, I would just pose one last question for you, that
Sure.
As a journalist who's been working in the field for so many years, covering so many things, I mean, what is the way forward for athletes, government, and normal people, viewers like us? What should we do in order to make sure that these kind of changes even happen in the sports? For example, a kid starts playing in the park. What should the government do in order to ensure that these things
I
get
think
trending?
what I like and what I've seen happening are these those gyms that you have outdoors. They put those outdoor gyms, and I saw them first in 2008 in China when I went for the Olympics. That is everywhere in the park. So if anyone wants to do any kind of exercise, it's there. But I'm talking about a city like Bangalore. I don't know how common it is elsewhere. I don't know how much has been put to use by, say, by corporators, by people who are, or panchayats, and whether that is an option that people have. I think access to sports is very important. Access to any kind of sport. I mean, you don't have to win. You just have to take part for the fun of it. And the shortage in India has always been of any kind of lack of competitive games for all through an age for people to play. Everyone says there's no club culture, but it doesn't have to be a club culture. In Manipur, which I always give this example, every Holi, which is they call Yaoshang in the Imphal Valley, neighborhoods compete with each other, and they have
Right.
their own sporting competitions. So that kind of thing is it's people driven. It has to be driven by, and boys will always play sport out in the open. But what about girls? How do girls get to be a part of that? So there are so many kind of issues that are at work here. Haryana, for example, has been a huge change maker in many ways in terms of the number of girls that take to sport. But how has that impacted the social the social conventions that exist
Correct.
there? We don't know. And because India is such a big country, I've come back from this fantastic Brahmaputra volleyball in Assam, which is played across for a few months around in the winters. It's played across almost, I think, 200 villages. And they compete with each other, and it's driven by community. There's no sponsors. So those kind of things, if they can be replicated elsewhere, I would be very happy about that. I'm not so fussed about medals anymore. It really doesn't matter to me whether we win medals in Olympics or we don't. I think more people playing sports, more people being active. I'm a board advisor at a Sports and Society Accelerator, which talks about the importance of SAPA, which is sports and physical activity. So SAPA that's the conversation that we need to have. We need to. Abhinav Bindra says this. We need to change the way how we look at sport in this country. How we see sport as just this medal producing thing. No, they see sport as benefit to all of us for health and for and how to cope with the environment and our surroundings.
Thanks a lot, Sharda, for giving us your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Praja. Thank you. Thanks a lot.